The talk today is to maximize revenue. So if we talk about revenue, we're talking about business, right? So this talk is really about the business of games and what we can do to make more money. And so it's very tailored toward mobile, and you're going to see why toward this presentation. But it doesn't mean that what I am going to tell you is not applicable to the other platforms, consoles, Steams, and the others. So just to start, the mobile market today is growing very strong. So we are now at $42 billion spent into mobile games this year. So that's a lot of money. And if we look back through the old statistic, it's growing a lot, but at the same time, it's slowing down. So if we go back to 2016, it was growing up by almost 40%, and now for this year, the stats from last week were at 17%. So it means that it's really slowing down, and that is the big reason is that China has more of these users that is now part of the market. But also, it's the old players that doesn't have really anything new to play with. And so they're still spending a lot, but this new generation of people that spends for the first time is more or less liquidated. So what it means for the new games, of course, is that you have to come with mechanics that are a bit more avant-garde. So that said, we have more countries to target. So we're at 32 countries now that makes more than 100 million a year in revenue. So that's a lot of spending. So it means that you have to go broader globally. But still, if you go with these 10 languages that are fairly small to look at right now, you're going to tap into 92% of the revenue that is being spent worldwide. So it means that if you give a little shot to localize your game, you're going to reach these huge markets and go into that 92% of 42 billion being spent. So that said, it's good for revenue, but how about downloads, right? So if you want to go for downloads, then you have to add a bit more languages because obviously since we're global, there's more countries to target. And India in the last year grew by 50% of downloads. So right now, 11% of all the games are being downloaded comes from India. All right, so if your market is to have more downloads, to have ads, or to spread some words, India is a very good market for it. The spending on the revenue are fairly low, and we're going to see why in a few minutes. But still, you really have to translate your game, and that will definitely maximize the revenue that you can have. It's a one-hit wonder. It's very, very important. And as it's written here, it's 55% of the people only buy in their native language, and that's simply because it's trust. When you want to create a brand, when you want to create something that is close to the people, you want to talk with their own languages. So obviously, trust is the #1 factor for people to do their first spending. And that should be what everyone wants here, is that people spend at least one time into your game, whatever you're doing. Worldwide, 80% of the people on this planet will have access to the web through the mobile phone by 2025. So that is also at the same time that 5G is out, which means that anyone's going into high-speed internet. Nothing is slow. So that's something to keep in mind for the years to come. Starting at 2020 in Tokyo at the Olympic Games, you're going to have this first I would say, sets of phones that comes out in 5G, but you have to think a bit forward because download today is very affecting the number of users you can have. There's a really wonderful stats coming from Android developers directly from their blog, which is for every 6 megabyte that you add to your APK, you lose 1% of your reach of players. So it literally means that if you have a game that is under 20 megabytes, you're going to have a way bigger reach of players than if you have one that is 120 megabytes and so on. So for you developers that understand what is an asset bundle and how to put assets on the side of the first install, do it like this. People's going to install more your game. It will end up into eventually more revenue as well. So this big trend that is going worldwide regarding mobile is that the cost to have a mobile phone that goes on the internet is really low. So if we go to emerging markets, we're now talking about 1% to 1.5% of the wage of someone to spend to have access to internet and a phone. So that's really, really, really low barrier. So that's why for right now and the years to come, all the emerging market is somewhere you should launch your game, because all of these markets are first-time players. They don't know what is a match 3 game. They don't know what is harvesting all about. They haven't played that yet. They are 5 to 10 years behind. It's a good place to start. It's a good place to make money. That's it. So we're going to look at where the revenue is coming from. So being at PlayFab, Microsoft, we have access to so much data that some of you might have, but we definitely have. And so this is really important. I really like the blinking that's happening. Anyway, so the genre worldwide are very different. So this is revenue by genre, okay? So it means that if you look on the left, I have China, and if you go a little bit more to the right, where I've put like a little white, anyway, you see United States, you can see that the revenue comes from different places, different type of games. So gambling, for example, is very strong in the United States, but if you go with gambling in China, it doesn't work. But if you input gambling strategies and mechanics into an MMO, it will work very well. The type of games you have worldwide are extremely different. The gameplay, the game mechanics, how fast you play, how high you can go in the leaderboard is different per region. If you think that the game that you're playing here, let's say in Serbia or in Germany, is the same as in Canada or as in Indonesia for the top 100 games, this is not the true. It's different game mechanics, different speed, it's different segments, it's different pricing, everything is different. And there's a reason for that. We are all different cultures and we don't necessarily like the same thing. So let's go a bit forward. So download by genre. Look at the difference. The downloads, what people have interest in versus what they spend is very different. For example, look at Japan. This red bar that you see that is very big, that's sports game. They really like sports games, so it means they run by, they put a lot of ads in there, obviously, but for in-app payment, there's not a lot of things happening. And then if we put these two that I just showed you side by side, we can see that there's a huge gap. There's places on this planet where there's very few casino game or gambling games are being downloaded, but there's a lot of money being done there. There's many places where there's a lot of download happening in strategy game, and there's also a lot of revenue coming there, but if you go to other countries, it doesn't work. So the type of game that you make is really for a typical market. So it's business 101. Your targeting is extremely important. And it goes with your cost as well. If you have a multiplayer game, if you have some assets on the side, if you're spending for some analytic left and right, these are all costs that you have to put into your cost acquisition. So obviously, if you're putting a lot of effort into countries that if people won't spend anything in it, even if they're interested, just because of the culture of the place, just don't put any effort there. So you have to make your homework before you go in those areas. So targeting, again, very important. So as I was saying earlier, as we go into the business of games, it's extremely important to understand what is the business. So I'm going to go even deeper into those statistics, and then we're going to talk more about game mechanics and other things that you can employ to make more money. So again, so if you look at the top revenue games worldwide, the games that were there 12 months ago, and the top 10 and top 500 didn't move a lot, right? But still, if you look at any other businesses on this planet, right? And do you know a lot of businesses, let's say, like, I don't know, like in the clothing industry, car industry, or jewelries, or makeup, doesn't matter, that, you know, the top 10 or the top 500 changed that much? Right? So we're pretty lucky in a way that there's space for new companies and new games to grow inside of this industry, because there's still 50% of the games that are here today that are making a lot of money that won't be there next year. This is still consolidating, and there's a lot of M&A, merger and acquisition, happening in many companies because of that. And then if we go into another type of way to look at money, and if we look at the top 100 to 200 versus 200 to 500, it's almost the same amount of money per week being made. So by any means, there's a huge gap by being in the top 100 of any countries versus being in the top 200 and down. And then if we go after top 500 and lower, there's not that much money being made in the games. But still, it gives you an idea of how much you can gain, how much you can spend also, and where you can go with that, and what are your long-term strategies to get there. So having the one-year cycle in mind is important, and to bring more content to stay at the top is doubly important. So again, more numbers. So the row at the bottom is crucial. It literally tells you that the more people play your game, have more sessions, the more revenue you're going to make. Like literally. And if you go down after that to 500 to 1,000, the number of sessions in a month, so those stats are for 1 month. That's actually for the month of August. Oh, yeah, I wrote it. So it's important that you have enough content so that people come back. So having mechanics that replay itself, so it means that even if you go from a level 1 to level 10 to level 20 to level 30, is more or less the same feeling, it's just with more difficulty or an addition of mechanics, will make the people come back. So make sure that your core loop are very, very well done. Make sure that you have events that copy-paste your core loops, but with different graphics and different wording to get people done. People will come back to play these things because that's what they like. So try to create as much as possible, as many sessions as you can into one month of gameplay. That's crucial. And then just to close up into all of this statistic fest and KPIs. So we have this, which is more or less like how the spenders are behaving. So we have 3 columns here. So we have the people who spend more than $1, people who spend more than $100, and people who spend more than $1,000. And we can see again that the days possible to be played for people that spend a lot of money is a lot higher than the people who spend only $1. So again, it means that replayability, being to be able to play every day the game, people who is going to be able to spend more money into it because they're more interested. And if you look at the graph that are bottom, what that is, it is the time it took for a player from the moment he installed a game to make its first payment. So if we look at the over $1,000, we can see that after 31 days, which is the last column of the graph, there's a lot of people that made their payment after that. So you need content for 200 days or even 300 days for your game. You can add events, you can add live ops on top of your game to create that content as you grow with your game, but definitely you really have to implement ways to create more time spent inside of your game. It will definitely result into more spending. So dynamic content is crucial. Dynamic content will make it make it possible for you to take mechanics and copy paste it and change the way it looks, change its feeling. And for example, make right now the Oktoberfest, and there was the back to school recently. Some games did that. And then during the summer, there was playing with water in some games. And obviously, there's all the holidays that are per country that you can target as well to create this replayability and make leaderboards on the side to people to compete with. And it will result in more revenue. That's a given. So that's one of really basic slide that tells you things that you can implement in your game that will result in more revenue. So if you go to the left, to the middle, to the right, to the left are implementation that takes longer time to refine, to have better implemented into your game. But those core mechanics will make the first payment converter happen in your game. So what I mean by that is that your goal, your number one goal, is to have someone to convert to pay something in your game. And your second goal, right after that it happens, is to keep it. Keep that player as long as you can. If in your metrics, the people who spend doesn't stay more than a week after, it's because they feel that they spent something that was worthless. But if they continue to stay, it means that they have a good feeling. So all of these points that I'm throwing away here can be implemented in various ways. There's a lot of talks, there's a lot of documentation you can find online about it, where what are the basic principles of these. But I'm going to go into some that are implemented today that you can look and find that are, in my opinion, easy to implement, but are not necessarily, I would say, characteristic of a game, of a video game, right? So let's start at probably one that all of you know, the IKEA effect of Gardenscape. So if you start playing Gardenscape today, after 15 minutes, there's going to be a little something that comes to the right, which is the safe. The safe, or the bank for some, is being used in hundreds of games. And what is that? So the technique is more or less, as you play, this safe will have more coins and coins and coins as you progress, but you cannot take those coins without paying for them. So more or less, the IKEA effect in there is, I work for something and it's not mine. How fair is that? This is one of the #1 converter to payer in many, many, many games. It's shown in different ways. You have to dig for it, but it works very well. And you're going to say to me, Mark, this has nothing to do with gaming. It's, people work for it. Why they don't have it? Well, you just said it. They really want it. So what happens if you don't pay for this safe that is limited at 3,000 coins? Well, you're going to fall into a segment, which is all of a sudden, you have events for you as a player that you can grow the safe to 12,000 coins. And then it's the same price. So as you progress in the game and as you put effort, you have this safe that has more and more coins. And all of a sudden, you're going to fall in the trap, which is, I've worked so much for it. Why not? I'm going to give that $3.99, that $5.99 to get my coins and be able to get what I work for. And there's a book that you probably know that talks very, very well about that, from Dan Ariely. You have to dig into that book. If you don't know it, you have to buy it now and read everything about it, especially to pricing, how to make something a special price. Go through that book, read it, all of it, order the second one that comes after it, and master it, implement it. There's no doubt that you're going to make more money with your game. It's a given. People are irrational in any given way. So let's go to another one. So this one is the VIP system. The VIP system worldwide is different from every region. The VIP system in Asia is so different than the VIP system that you're going to have in Europe, you're going to have in North America. Why is that? The people in, let's call it Western people. The Western people don't feel like paying for something is right. It's more that if other people give you something, this is right. So in the VIP system, you're going to find mechanics such as, oh, now you can share those resources with your friends. So how about you pay a little bit more, and then, people around you is going to see you as a really good guy. And obviously, if you have a chat in your game, you need a VIP system. Because there's a little badge next to you that's going to say, hey, I'm level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. And when there's the level 10 that comes in the place, or the king of your clan, or whatever, everyone's going to be notified on the server. Or if you have a global game, everyone's going to know it. And people are going to see that you are so good. And VIP systems are really based into leaderboards. So leaderboards worldwide are seen very differently. So since this talk is about global, I'm going to talk a bit about Asian leaderboards, about VIP system. You have leaderboards about how much money you spent in the game. Have you ever seen a leaderboard about how much you spend in a game? Well, in China, it is actually one of the most popular ones. So every day there's a leaderboard about how much you spend. Every week there's one as well. And obviously there's rewards at the end of the week, of the day, about how much you spend. And then again, how much you give to others and how much you played as a community. There's leaderboards for about anything. And obviously, once you go into that VIP mode, you have to create a lot of content, but that's where also your search optimization into the various stores is very, very impacted. So because the idea is that once you go in the VIP model, you have to add a lot of content. You have to create a lot of events to make sure that the people, I would say, it's like a subscription system. They always pay to stay in that mode. So you more or less have to update your game all the time. And at the same time, you have to change your search optimization because your game changes as it progresses, and your game's getting more and more niche as the months and the years goes. And but it makes a lot of money, like a dead load of money. And clans in general, it's a very, very old concept. So this book called Propaganda is from 1923. And it literally tells you all the basic of how to control a crowd and how to make them happy and how to make them work more and how to make everything beautiful. And there's a very nice documentary that was done about 10 years ago by BBC from Adam Curtis called The Century of the Self, which is more or less these techniques of how to sell to people doing PR and other things are being used by government today to make you believe that everything is fine. And it's very wonderful once you go into that mindset. And I want to add that these books are extremely popular in the casino industry, in the iGaming, and most of the top 10 to top 100 revenue title that I've talked earlier, they all apply these concepts. They use segmentation, cohorts, A/B testing to make sure to find where you fall into these traps, and then you're going to make more revenue. Great. I hope you like it so far. Push notification. If you don't use push notification, your retention is going to be lower. I always say that if you want to make a good game, you have to see it like baseball. So baseball, if you don't know what that is, that you tap a ball, you go to the first base, second base, third base, and then you go and make the goal. So the first base is retention. Second base is optimization. Third base is marketing, and then you make your point. So retention is the first thing you have to fix. If you cannot have good retention, revenue is going to drop with time. It's really boring. So you need good retention. Find the right idle games, MMOs, casino games, gambling games, match 3 games, harvesting games. They all have different retention levels. So it's very hard to find a good target for you. But still, there's I would say you have to talk with people in the industry to get those KPIs to give you a benchmark, but still go that way. Make yourself an engagement calendar. An engagement calendar is that you have to know for the next weeks, or at least 2-3 weeks, what you will talk about to your players. So you have to mark which events are coming from and what is this event for? Is it an event for retention, to convert people to payers? And how hard this event will be. It means that, is it like something that the players have really have to grind a lot to get to the end results? So it means that you will have to ponderate also your burnout of your players, of how much energy they put in the game. So obviously, when we talk about ads, if people doesn't convert to payer after a little while, you can start to use ads as much as possible for everything. And you can also give them points for watching ads that can convert later to real money currency. That's something that is being done. But still, you have to segment very well, and you have to make sure that your game type is not a game where people can talk to each other a lot, because obviously if there's too much communication between your players, there's going to be difference into how someone was able to get something, and then people are going to leave your game because it's going to get tricky for you to handle. But still, there's a book about that. It's called Risk Society. So more or less, events per se, it's a risk of, maybe making your players bored about doing the same thing all the time, as I was saying earlier. But still, we live in a society of risk, which means that people are very wealthy will buy a lot of insurance and stuff like that to remove the risk. While people who are poor will live in that risk every day, feeling that they might die somewhere left and right. And risk is part of our society in general and is being exploited in every single game that are making a lot of money. So I suggest this book for reading. It's very interesting. That said, you need tools. If you don't have tools to be able to do action on top of your game, if you don't have a CRM to adjust the player progression, if you don't have a CMS to change the content in your game on the fly without having to make a new install for your players, please find something that's going to do that for you. Making courts is super basic. You have to find your churn rate inside of your game. You have to figure out where people leave. Your progression system is 100% important. You have to find where people convert. If you don't know these things, you're going nowhere. Having analytic is great. Having analytic that you can make action on top of it, that's fantastic. That's how you're going to be able to perform. So go in that direction. Make it happen. If you go in Asia, you're going to see that most of the games has a lot of special effects. And now they figured out that it's very easy to take Asian game style, bring it to the American market. And more, if you talk to the App Store folks, they're going to say that, if your game is very pretty and its style is very unique, it's going to get featured because people like to see something new. So go in that direction if you want to get some new installs. And again, here for what I was repeating earlier. And the challenge really in our industry is to keep the players together, make sure that they do understand what they have, make sure that they do understand where people are, because if you create a society, you're going to create revenue. So that's more or less what you have to remember. Thank you.